No woman deserved to go through this. After 45 years of commitment and devotion, she has to accept that her life was a lie. The betrayal she was experiencing took away her sense of self. She was angry, but she still wanted revenge. Even though her husband was dead, his misdeeds had just come alive, and she was not going to let it go so easily. Elizabeth Hamilton was born and raised in Hoboken, New Jersey. She had always been an independent woman. Growing up, she had to fight for the life she deserved, and she came out victorious when she learned that she got accepted into her dream college. She thought she was in the perfect spot to transform all her struggles and hard work into a life of success and happiness. Ever since she was a little girl, she dreamed of becoming a successful journalist. When she read her acceptance letter to the University of California, she knew she was one step closer to becoming the woman of her dreams. She vowed that nothing would get in the way of her dreams, but that all changed when she met Benjamin. Even though Elizabeth preferred to keep to herself, her roommate convinced her to go to a college party. Elizabeth arrived at the party, and she couldn't help but feel out of place. The room was filled with beautiful women. Despite her confident, ambitious, and independent character, Elizabeth had always felt like a little of an ugly duckling. She thought she was nothing compared to them. When she locked eyes with Benjamin, she couldn't believe her luck. He was beautiful, and he wanted to do nothing but talk to her. She wanted to learn everything about him, but her roommate pulled her from their conversation. Elizabeth wasn't aware of it yet, but there was a dark side to that handsome and charming young man. "You need to stay away from him. I've heard terrible stories about him," she said in a hushed tone. Elizabeth asked her about the specifics. After hearing about the rumors that had been swirling about that man, she felt scared but also intrigued. Elizabeth couldn't help but be captivated by that man, so of course, she did not listen. If only she heeded her roommate's warning. Elizabeth continued seeing Benjamin, and they quickly began dating. Her roommate did not approve of their relationship and even stopped talking to her, but she did not care. She was young and madly in love, and she didn't care about anything other than her blooming relationship with Benjamin. She never thought she would have the qualities to attract the interest of a man like him, and she felt on cloud nine. During her high school years, Elizabeth had never been the most popular girl in her class. Boys rarely showed an interest in her, and she was too introverted to get along with the other girls. She preferred to focus on her studies rather than on her social life, and she grew quite insecure about her own likability and attractiveness. But now, all of that had changed, temporarily at least. Not long after they both graduated from college, he asked her to marry him. She couldn't understand what he saw in her, but she didn't want to question it. Benjamin treated her in a way that she had never been treated before, and she felt like she couldn't let him go. They were on top of the world, and nothing could go astray, or that's what they thought. Time would prove them wrong. Elizabeth and Benjamin had a fairy tale wedding. It was truly the happiest day of their lives. Elizabeth wasn't too religious, but she felt like the universe, a higher power or whatever, was finally rewarding her for all her struggles. As far as what Benjamin felt, it was somewhat of an enigma. Many people had their own theories about what were Benjamin's true motive. He swore on his life that Elizabeth was the woman he had always dreamed of, but many people thought he was way out of her league. Even Elizabeth herself caught herself entertaining those kinds of thoughts occasionally. However, she kept trying to brush them off, chalk them up to her own insecurities, and enjoy the picture-perfect husband life had sent her way. Their life together had a strong start, but the young couple soon started to encounter problems they were not prepared for. Benjamin was very busy, but so was Elizabeth. She was still determined to come out at the top of her field, and he was no different. However, when they did have time to spend together, he would spend most of it on his cell phone. But there was more. Benjamin rarely helped out around the house, and she did not have the time to take care of everything. Elizabeth then decided to hire a maid named Mallory to help lessen their load. Benjamin took an instant liking to her, to the point where Elizabeth felt uncomfortable. Mallory was a beautiful woman, and she reminded Elizabeth of everything that she was not. She knew she was just being paranoid, so she just shrugged it off. As she had already done numerous times since she started her relationship with Benjamin, she tried to tell herself that those were just her insecurities talking. She loved him, and he loved her. Mallory proved to be a huge help, and Elizabeth treated her like family. Elizabeth believed she was someone she could trust, but she was wrong. The first time Elizabeth caught Mallory and Benjamin having an intimate conversation, she convinced herself that she was making things up. However, the conversations became more frequent and more flirtatious. At first, she tried to ignore it, but eventually, it came to a point where she couldn't deal with it any longer. She started to resent them, and she knew she had to do something about it. Elizabeth confronted her husband about his behavior and how it made her feel. He opened up about her insecurities, how sometimes she didn't feel enough for him, and her pain when she saw certain things. He promised he would be a better husband to her. His behavior changed overnight, and she remembered why she fell in love with him in the first place. However, he would soon show her why she could not trust him. Benjamin's behavior improved, and after a lengthy discussion, the pair decided it was time to expand their little family. It was the perfect time to have a child. They were both successful in their respective fields. They were making good money and even purchased their dream home. However, they would soon find a dramatic bump in the road of their relationship. They tried for months for a baby, but every pregnancy test returned negative. Elizabeth contacted every specialist in the country and made appointments with them all. Elizabeth was finally able to see a future for herself as a mother, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make her dream a reality. However, she would soon be disappointed once again. It was a difficult time for her, and she had to endure it all alone. Benjamin was back to his old habits, and he spent more time away from home than with her. He was acting strangely, and Mallory's presence only made matters worse. For the first time, Elizabeth started fearing that her dreams of a picture-like relationship had been nothing more than that, dreams. But would it get better? What should she do? Elizabeth felt disappointed in herself. She could not give her husband a child, and the years could have been kinder to her. She remembered her friends' warnings about Benjamin and regretted not having considered them or having set more serious boundaries with him. To add insult to injury, she noticed that he had been making weekly cash withdrawals from their joint account. She knew she needed to get to the bottom of things. One evening, she sat Benjamin down and shared her suspicions regarding Mallory. Benjamin immediately shot them down and tried to convince her that she was being paranoid. He pointed out how helpful the maid had been over the years and said he felt like it was unfair to make him feel bad for showing gratitude to the woman who kept their house clean and presentable. Elizabeth, scared of upsetting her husband, agreed, and that was the end of the conversation. Elizabeth stuck by Benjamin's side for 45 years. He grew more distant as the years went by, with random bursts of love and affection that kept becoming more and more inconsistent and rare. His relationship with Mallory was also more friendly than Elizabeth liked, but she knew he would never hurt her in that way. She would soon learn how terribly wrong she was. After being with Benjamin for so many years, it saddened her that she felt like she had spent her whole life with a stranger. But shortly after, the couple was hit with some tragic news. She noticed his health was deteriorating. It kept getting worse and worse, and it seemed quite serious. After several visits to different doctors, he was soon diagnosed with a terminal illness. She asked Mallory to work extra hours to help take care of Benjamin, and she happily agreed. Knowing that she was on the verge of losing the love of her life, she pushed down all of her doubts and regrets to be there for him. She couldn't let her own insecurities ruin what might be her husband's last days in this world. Benjamin's condition quickly deteriorated, and it was not long after he passed away. Elizabeth was struck with debilitating grief when she learned she had lost her husband. She wanted to do right by him and give him the burial he deserved. After all, that man had stood by her and given her many memories she would treasure forever. She couldn't suspect that her grief would very soon turn into rage. She drove to the mortuary to ask to preserve her husband's body, so that his loved ones could say their goodbyes. She could barely come to terms with the heartbreaking truth. The man she had loved so much was gone forever. However, when she took a look at her husband's clothing, she spotted something that made her blood boil. On the right sleeve of his shirt, she saw a button that she knew she had seen before. He was wearing the shirt that Mallory gave him as a gift so many years ago. When she noticed the left sleeve's button was missing, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She rushed home and rummaged through her husband's belongings, and what she found sent shivers down her spine. She found a box titled, "This is a simple gift for you, my darling." She opened the box and found pictures of her husband and Mallory laughing together with two children she had never seen before in her life. She had known Mallory for decades, and she had never mentioned having children. The box also contained something else that made her stomach drop to her knees and tears come to her eyes: the missing button and numerous love letters. As she became aware that there was obviously a relationship between them, her heart began to pound in her chest and tears began flowing down her cheeks. Her whole life had been nothing but a lie. There were no words to describe the pain she felt when she realized her husband had been living a double life. She knew she had no other choice but to get her revenge. The first thing she did was confront Mallory. She had been with the Hamilton family for decades, and she couldn't believe this was her way of thanking her. She admitted that the children were Benjamin's and that he had been supporting them for years. She tried to beg for her forgiveness, but it fell on deaf ears. She then contacted their friends and family and informed them what her husband had done. She also told them that she would no longer attend his burial or help arrange it. Everybody supported her decision, but what was next for Elizabeth? Benjamin's burial came and went, but Elizabeth made sure not to even think about him. Even though she felt as if she had wasted most of her years on a man that did not deserve her love and care, she knew her life was only just beginning. In order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events or places or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental.